All right, let's dive into one of the most printed books in all of human history. Quotations from Chairman Mao Tse-tung, but you probably know it as the Little Red Book. Now, it's been called everything from an ideological weapon to a spiritual guide. So the big question is, what's actually inside this book? What are the ideas that shaped the worldview of literally billions of people? Well, let's find out. First, you have to get your head around the scale of this thing. We're not talking about millions of copies being printed. We are talking about billions. And this was never a book that was meant to sit on a library shelf. It was a mass-produced ideological tool designed to be small enough for pretty much everyone in China and its followers across the globe to carry it, read it, and memorize it.
The foreword, written by Lin Piao, just comes out swinging. It says that once you grasp Mao's thought, it becomes a spiritual atom bomb of infinite power. Just think about that phrase for a second. Right from the very first page, this book isn't presented as something you just read. No, it's framed as a weapon, one for a revolution of the mind.
So how exactly is this spiritual atom bomb built? We're going to break it down by looking at 5 core ideas right from the text. First, the purpose of the book itself. Then, the absolute power of the party. The idea of the world as a constant struggle. Where political power really comes from. And finally, how you should think about your enemy.
Okay, first up, what was the book's stated purpose? You know, the foreword doesn't really hide its intentions at all. It lays out exactly what the reader is supposed to do with all these quotations.
Yeah, this was never meant for some quiet academic study session. The foreword explicitly tells people to study with specific problems in mind, to mix their reading with real-world action, and, importantly, to get quick results. It's basically designed as a practical handbook for action, a tool for applying Mao's ideas to everyday life and its problems.
So, if the book is a tool for action, who gets to direct that action? Well, the text makes it crystal clear right from the jump. It lays down its most fundamental principle. The Communist Party is the absolute center of everything.
This right here is the foundation of the entire worldview, and it's stated in the very first chapter. There is zero ambiguity. The party is defined as the force at the core, the one and only leader of the revolution. It's the starting point, and every other idea in this book flows from it.
And building on that, the text lays out what it calls the 3 main weapons for beating the enemy. See the common thread here? A disciplined party, an army under its leadership, and a united front also under its leadership. The party is positioned as the brain, the arm, and the hand of the entire revolution. It's in charge of everything.
So, if the party is the leader, what kind of world does it have to lead in? According to the Little Red Book, it's a world defined by one constant, inescapable truth: struggle.
This is the engine of history as described in the text. It's basically a zero-sum game. Classes are always in conflict, and history is just the story of who wins and who gets eliminated. This isn't just a political theory either. It's presented as the fundamental law of all human civilization.
Now, to navigate this world of endless struggle, the book gives you a very important framework. It says you can sort every single conflict into one of 2 boxes. You have contradictions with the enemy, which are antagonistic. They have to be resolved with struggle and dictatorship. But then you have contradictions among the people, which are non-antagonistic and can be sorted out peacefully. Of course, the billion-dollar question then becomes, who gets to decide who is the people and who is the enemy?
And when it comes to dealing with that enemy, the book is brutally direct about what's needed. This is one of its most famous passages, and it just strips away any romantic ideas about gentle change. A revolution, it says, is a violent act of overthrow, period.
So, who is this enemy that needs to be overthrown? The book doesn't leave it all abstract and vague. It gives the reader a very concrete list, targeting groups like warlords, bureaucrats, big landlords, and basically anyone considered to be working with imperialists.
Okay, so if the world is a constant struggle and revolution is a violent act against a clear enemy, the next logical question has to be, how is that violence supposed to be carried out? Well, the book has a very, very direct answer for that.
The text gets right to the heart of any revolution. How do you actually take power? And, just as important, how do you hold on to it once you have it?
And there's your answer. This is probably the single most famous quote from the entire book. It is a direct, blunt, unambiguous link between military force and political control. For the person reading this, the message couldn't be clearer. Armed struggle isn't just an option, it's the main event. And look, this isn't just some catchy phrase. It's a core belief. The text argues that the army is the chief component of state power and talks about the omnipotence of revolutionary war. It makes it perfectly clear that in this worldview, guns are what truly transforms society.
But, facing powerful enemies who have better weapons, that can be terrifying. So to deal with that fear, the book introduces a really powerful psychological tool, something designed to build up a revolutionary's confidence for the long, hard fight ahead.
And here it is, the famous concept of the paper tiger. The whole idea is to completely reframe how you see the enemy. Sure, they look scary, like a real tiger, but the argument is that because they aren't connected to the people, they're fundamentally weak and doomed to fail. In reality, they're just made of paper. But this whole concept isn't an excuse to be reckless. The book is very careful to explain that the enemy has a dual nature. Strategically, in the long term, you should see them as paper tigers that are definitely going to lose. But tactically, in any single fight, you have to treat them as living, iron, real tigers which can devour people. This quote just sums up that whole approach perfectly. It's a formula for how to balance that long-term, revolutionary confidence with short-term, practical caution. So be bold about your ultimate goal, but be incredibly careful in every single fight that gets you there. So let's just pull all these threads together for a second. The worldview that the Little Red Book presents is pretty comprehensive and, you have to admit, internally consistent. It argues that the Communist Party is the absolute leader, that all of history is just class struggle, that revolution has to be violent, that real power comes from military force, and that all your enemies, while dangerous up close, are just paper tigers that are doomed to fail in the long run. And that really brings us back to the incredible power of this book. By packaging a really complex ideology into simple, memorable, and actionable quotes, it gave hundreds of millions of people a single lens to see the entire world through. It's just a stark reminder of how a simple, easy-to-repeat text can genuinely change the course of history.